obligations of contract. They have obligations to inform us of the nature of jurisdiction.
How do we get those enforced?
You're going to have to go to the law library.
Instead of on an individual level, shouldn't it be on a corporate level?
It can be done in a number of ways.
People elected to office.
If I may comment, since the president stacked the courts and have done this to make sure that the decisions on the 16th Amendment and Trading with the Enemy Act and the Emergency War Powers, none of this stuff gets challenged in courts. So the trick is then, of course, become informed citizenry, so then we can vote in a president who will then create a court that actually bothers to read the Constitution and apply it.
Yes, although at this point in time, I'm skeptical about things really changing in that manner, because we're always going to be spoon-fed the candidates that the powers that be want us to vote for. What we're trying to do with this, the use of fraud suits, the use of perjury of oath of office suits, 18 U.S.C. 1621. What we're trying to do is make these individual officials take the consequences for their actions. And things aren't going to change. A person never grows up until they're made to take the fall for what they've done. Right. So things aren't going to really change until we strip away their cloak of immunity, their cloak of being able to do what they can do without any retribution at all. The issues in fraud specifically say that there's no immunity when it comes to fraud. It doesn't matter who you are. U.S. v. Throckmorton, 98 U.S. 61, says that fraud vitiates all contracts. And that includes judgments, decrees, orders, anything that comes out of, if it comes out by fraud, it's a phony, and it has no power.
Would that include the national debt?
Yes, and what I said before about there were indications going all the way back to the beginning of the country that there was an effort to undermine and take away what was gained at the Revolution. In the and I noticed you had a constitution there. Maybe you can flip through it and try to find it. There's a spot where it says that the national debt cannot. I think it's in Article 6 or Article 7 of the Constitution itself, not the Bill of Rights, where it says the national debt cannot be disputed. Now, I bet you those bankers back there wanted, at the time of the inception of the nation, they really wanted that particular clause to be in there. Now, in putting something back at the beginning of the country, that by the time 200 years later, when we see what the national debt really is, it was a big divisive fraud to turn us into a slave state, and then go 200 years back and see that that was put in there, so we could not dispute that. You got to start thinking about these things. You got to start thinking about what has happened with the original laws, the corruption that has happened through the years. Like I just showed you here, with the inclusion of the abolition of the distinction of law and equity, and those kind of things that were added in after the original government was made. Those are actually unconscionable addenda to contract. Those were not part of the laws of government when the government was made, and they made them afterwards. Now, if you get into a contract with somebody and put your John Hancock down on it, and then they go and then they put a bunch of other conditions on it and come back down the line and say, oh, you need to do all this other stuff too. Can you do that in a contract? No. And that's exactly what they've done. This is from, let me read something right here. This is from American Jurisprudence. This is Title 16 Constitutional Law. This is also part of some of the things that you should review in your homework at the law library. Title 16 Constitutional Law, also Title 16 Conspiracy, particularly Section 30, Conspiracy to Defraud. Or excuse me, Section 32, Conspiracy to Defraud. Those are things that all empower us to come back and take on this fraud. Okay, and this is about constitutional law and deals with preservation of rights. It says one of the greatest objects of government is to protect the life, liberty, and property of the individual. That's the most important part of that statement. The individual. It's not. Government doesn't exist to protect the corporation. Government doesn't exist to protect your local fraternal group or organization, or it's to protect the individual. To this end, and in order that the constitutional system may be a government of laws, not of men, it is customary for constitutions to prescribe and limit the powers of the government and thereby operate as bulwarks of liberty for the protection of private rights. A constitution was never intended to be a cloak for strategy or other device employed to defeat the plainest principles of justice. Constitutions are intended to preserve practical and substantial rights, and not merely to enunciate theories of government. The provisions of the Constitution, state or federal, do not cover rights, privileges, and obligations not specified and not existing or understood at the time of its adoption, or not enforced by long acquiescence or by continued official or public approval. A constitution is not the beginning of a community, nor does it originate and create institutions of government, but instead it assumes the existence of an established system which is to continue in force and is based on pre-existing rights, laws, and modes of thought. The pre-existing rights, laws, modes of thought that created the U.S. Constitution were brought over from England through the common law. So that's what the Constitution is for, is to protect us as individuals, protect our individual property, our individual liberty, our individual destinies. And it's not, again, it was not supposed to be meant as a device to create things down the line which pull those rights and basic substantive rights away from us. Anything else?
Well, you mentioned the national debt. Now, who do we owe that national debt to?
This is no. Well, the World Bank and International Monetary Fund.
Where do they get this wealth from? Because there's only one source of wealth, and that's from raw material, and that's God given.
Right, and that's the first level of fraud. How do these people claim to own what God really owns?
You can't create wealth with nothing. You don't take it out of the air.
Right. And it's only by our sweat equity that our creature requirements come into being. But through these devices, through these tricks, through these legalistic deceptions, they've created a system that obliges us to go and work our rear ends off, come home with nothing, and ship it all off. Now, we're at a state right now where we're just at a little less than half of what we own is being stolen back from us, or what we earn is being stolen back from us. By the time our kids are our age, or my age, I'm 41, they're going to be paying 85%. 82? Well, what kind of tax bracket they're in and what kind of deductions they take. But it's going to be just too burdensome. All you're going to be doing is living to support the state. You're going to be a creature of the state. And it's got to stop now. Otherwise, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And is this what we want to hand to our kids?
Do you have any other books or other literature?
Yes. This de facto government of the United States, Authority of Law,
The author
by Charles Wiseman. Authority of Law by Charles Wiseman also. Here's also a treatise on arrest and false imprisonment. He also wrote that treatise on the 14th Amendment that I was showing you. Or he wrote the foreword on it. No, it was written by a guy named Judge Perez or something like that. But I have a friend up in Lansing that can get access to these books. If you want to get a collection of these books together, we can try to put an order together, and then I can contact him, and he can get a bulk thing going, and cut you a price on on what you guys want.
What a pitch in for the meeting did you go to up there also?
Yeah, we also get together Saturday mornings. These are guys who are essentially dealing with the, doing these legal research issues and kind of stuff. we meet up at the Old Country Buffet up in Lansing on Saturday mornings. Usually, 9 o'clock on, to about 11:30 or 12, and it's pretty much a networking thing. We get together, and there are guys coming over from Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, pretty much the mid-Michigan area. And we get together and exchange information, and we've been able to get some pretty productive research going, and we're starting to make some significant gains in our knowledge about what's going on, and but it's not going to do any good if I'm just able to articulate from A to Z what's wrong and nobody else understands or gives a hoot. We're all obliged, I'm now speaking in the most serious manner. We're all obliged to understand what's happened to us, and this is a terrible crime, and things have to change. But again, by resorting to the armaments and weapons and the violence, we're absolutely playing in to what they want to have happen. And they have a hell of a lot more bullets than any of us. And it's better to be alive and know this stuff and be speaking out about it. You may even have to go into jail once or twice or 3 times. But this is what's got to happen. These judges have to be put on the hot seat. The court officials have to be put on the hot seat. They have to understand that we now know that they're playing a scam that is directly against our interests, our individual interests. And in doing so, they are aiding and abetting the enemy. They have declared themselves as being enemies of us, and their direct effort, even though they do it through very civil procedurality and wearing suits and ties and never, speaking up, in loud tones or anything else, they're taking everything you got away from you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, you're wrong there when you say that about the guns and the bullets and stuff. It's just like somebody calling a strike. You don't have enough people there to strike. You don't have enough.
Well, I'm not saying that, go throw away this stuff. I'm saying that going out and creating scenarios of violence and stuff like that is exactly what they want to happen.
No, but we can protect ourselves from coming out.
Well, when you're protecting yourselves, it'll last for a little while. But they've got a heck of a lot of bullets.
What he's trying to say is, have your guns and have your ammunition, but for God's sake, don't run out and rattle your saber and have something
Right.
else, because
Right. They are absolutely right now looking for any excuse. They're looking for any excuse to make it overt law, make overt martial law.
Trying to force our hand.
That's right.
Well, and
So I'm not saying I'm saying remain protected. Stay secure.
Anyway, look at Oklahoma. There's no question in my mind who done that.
Sure.
It's a proven fact what they did in Ruby Ridge and
Sure.
Waco.
Yeah.
I mean, they admitted to that.
It's the biggest crime that could ever have been committed on the human race.
Have martial law. All they got to do is say we did it. Well, they did do that to start with.
They're gonna, yeah.
What's the best way we can individually fight this war on fraud that's going on?
The best thing,
Other than being aware of it going on?
spread the word around.
Without
Talk.
getting arrested yourself.
in the courts, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do we support the effort against this fraud?
Freedom
Freedom of Information Act.
Yes, you can do that. Start sending in Freedom of Information Acts to your courthouse, to your court system, saying, please describe to us the methodology of jurisdiction you're using in the courtrooms. Just start doing various methods. I'm suing a number of players here in Calhoun County and in Lansing and John Engler for perpetrating a fraud on the people of the state of Michigan and injuring my personal family life. My tack on what should be done is you need to start making the people who make the decisions from the top down pay the consequences for what they're doing. So we need to start bringing up lawsuits, start suing the judges, start suing the upper level politicos who should be privy to this knowledge, and are either playing dumb or are only in their position because they are dumb to it. But start making these people pay personally, and I'm not talking about going and shooting them in the head or that kind of stuff, but and we can even move into the realm of the use of commercial liens and those sort of devices. Again, suing them for a perjury of oath of office pursuant to that 18 U.S.C. 1621. Also deprivation of civil rights, conspiracy to defraud, pursuant to 18 U.S.C. 241 and 242. Also the civil rights, defrauding you out of your civil rights, pursuant to 42 U.S.C. 1986, 1985, 2 and 3, and 1983. And also there are overarching issues of peonage, which is slavery through the use of debt obligation. And this is pretty much what's happening today. 42 U.S.C. 1994, which is supposed to be an extension of the 13th Amendment prohibiting slavery. What they've done today is they got rid of the master-slave definition of slavery back at the Civil War and replaced it with the employer-employee or the corporation-agent relationship. Those have slavery still exists, it's just differently labeled. Today's slavery is done through the use of debt obligation, through the use of your mortgage, the use of having to pay your property taxes all the time. Prior to 1933, when you owned a piece of property, you owned it. You didn't have to. It was a loyal title. You owned it outright. You didn't have to keep paying to own. All those things have happened since the implementation of this emergency war powers stuff, and those are the things that we've lost. These are the substantial rights that we have lost. The right to have our own piece of property, eke out our own way of living, be able to live off the land. That's been stolen from us. Yeah.
Okay, when martial law is declared, what affects the trust, titles, and like ownership?
You don't own anything. You don't own anything.
Okay, when martial law
The piece of paper that says that you own things are illusions and can be declared void at any time by these courts.
Law, he was talking martial. If I had a trust or anything like that, be gone.
If it was decided, if you're one of the players, if you're one of the in groups, no, you get to keep your wealth. You get to, if you're one of the troublemakers, if you're one of the people who are trying to contest what's going on, challenge things, what's going on, you're going to have your stuff stolen from you. Part of that, that was part of the Communist Manifesto, the looting of the rebellious people or whatever.
When you're suing them, how are you ever going to get to court? If you don't believe in the maritime law, court, how are you ever going to get into it?
Well, I had to piece together a very tricky complaint. What I'm doing is I am demanding my right to a Article 3, Section 2 venue, pursuant to, Article 3, Section 2, also Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution, which says that the judges have to abide by what's in the Constitution. Absolutely. And it doesn't matter what anything says in any other state contract or other commercial agreement. It says the states have to abide by the what it says in the U.S. Constitution. And again, I cited Marbury v. Madison, which says that the judicial power extends to all cases arising out of the Constitution. The reverse of that, the other side of that coin, is that no Constitution, no judicial power. See what I'm saying? Judicial power extends to all cases arising under the Constitution. The Constitution, the conditions and precepts that the courts are supposed to operate by, as described in the Constitution, are supposed to be employed all the time.
What's the school of thought behind all this?
We're pretty much, setting out to a new sea right now. We're
what I mean is, what's the reason when you telling about setting up the two governments and the government over the District of Columbia and moving everything around in this country? I've already got an idea in my head what it is. I want to find out what your idea is. The
the idea, my idea was that the international community never intended to have the United States remain as a independent sovereign state indefinitely. And through various devices, they came over and said, okay, yeah, you guys can have your nice little free country and everything. But through members of, now, are you familiar with what the bar is? The Bar Association. The International Bar, the Bar Association started with the International Bar. The International Bar was started by King George. People who belong to the Michigan Bar belong to the American Bar and belong to the International Bar. They are actually foreign agents to this country. These people have been involved in a long-term disintegration of our inherent rights, established rights that were supposed to be inalienable, according to the original documents, have spent a long time chipping away. King George didn't want to spend a lot of time wasting energy and resources in a long, drawn-out revolution. He said, you guys go ahead and have your country, and then he proceeded to flood the country with lawyers who systematically proceeded to create systems of seizure, property and personal seizure against the individuals in this country, and this is the same system that's still going on.
Is that communist or socialist or?
Statism, whatever method of labeling you want to give it, it really doesn't matter. It just ends up being a
Technically, it's fascism.
Well,
yeah.
whatever, but
Yeah.
it's what we want.
No.
We've got.
The whole point is that there's no freedom. That you were born to be a product, a unit of labor, a unit of productivity for a system who is going to just parasitize you all of your life. And all you're going to be allowed to have during your life is just enough to get by, enough to get to the next paycheck, just so you can keep working and keep producing.
Debt obligation is a good word to it.
Yeah, and
Is that like 4 years ago, we used to go to the corn crib in the spring of the year and shell the corn and plant it, and then we had some smart ass tell us that we couldn't use that anymore, and now we pay $90 a bushel for corn and then have to go to
That's right.
and borrow $200-300.
That's right.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
yeah, all these things happen, like the disempowerment of the individual farmer by the seductive programs of the federal regulative government, and as soon as you fall into their grasp, you're not getting back out. You start become dependent on your subsidies, your other devices and stuff like that, and you lose your independence. This kind of methodology has been used by, heroin dealers for a long time. They get you dependent. They get you comfortable and feel comfortable in being in the scenario of voluntary servitude that you've essentially been forced to fall into, and essentially your life is theirs.
You got interested in this how long ago?
I got involved with this probably going on 3 years now, just because of what happened after my involvement in the legal system as a result of my divorce. But I just couldn't understand how there could be a system who was able to just systematically destroy a family just like that, just on the flimsiest of premises. And the more I tried to be a good boy, be a good man, do what the judge wants and all this kind of stuff. But I saw that I was getting sold down the line in the worst way, and I just couldn't stand for it. And because I've been so enthusiastic about this, or so aggressive, I guess to a certain degree, in finding this stuff out, I have been severely penalized, and they're trying right now to prevent me from seeing my kids ever now. So, if you bring this stuff out, if you are shaking the tree, they're going to do something to try to bring you down. So, but what's the trade-off?
One of the things we stress that Barry works on also, he goes to court quite often. People in our group go to court, and when we do, we support each other by being there in court with each other. He does the same thing if he goes to court, and if any of you would like to be there to help him and to support him by being in the courtroom, and we have documents that you can fill out when the judge talks and stuff. And it helps in a number of ways just to be an observer in court, and Barry and them can help us when we go to court, or some of us, and we can help him also. So if you're interested in that, make sure you get a hold of us. We've been doing that all along for other folks and stuff like that.
That's one of the important ways. Is you got to be very, if you're going to get involved with the legal system like this, you got to be very involved with the networking, be very involved with court watching. You got to have witnesses to the acts that these judges do against you, and their tendency to really get on you lessens with the more witnesses that are present. And I've had some actually beneficial things happen to me just because I was able to get a number of people witnessing in my behalf.
Barry is in the area and he's willing to come back again. Would you like to have him come back and discuss things with us again?
Yeah. I've just, no, I don't know if this was very skitsy. I hope you got some usable information out of this. I hope I described things in a way that appeared to make sense to show you that things aren't what they appear to be. We've got a lot more information about the intricacies of what's going on with this stuff, and it ends up at some point getting kind of tedious and boring with giving case cites and all that kind of stuff. But we're starting to chip away at this protective barrier that they're trying to prevent us from finding out what the real story is, and we need to expose this in the biggest way. We need to show that it affects everybody, and everybody in not a beneficial way. And when people start to see that and make these individuals be accounting for the consequences of their actions, then perhaps we can get into some beneficial changes.
What's the best and the safest way to fight the war we're in?
Actually, I think you should make an effort to try to bring suits of fraud against and we can start to put together and I'm not practicing law, but we can start to put together a blueprint type complaint that you can use pretty much against any official, because they're operating under this gold fringe jurisdiction and de facto government. And we could start putting in a lawsuit a day against these individuals and start going top down. And when you start suing, I'm suing Engler individually, I think for $10 million. All these other county judges, varying in range from $2 million to $10 million, and
Well, don't he need that $10 million to feed them 3 little kids he's got to raise?
well,
They're kind of bad shape.
well.
Huh?
Well, the point is are these guys ever going to? You got to rattle their trees in the way that you can. And the whole point of doing the suing is that we have found a way that we're able to sue them as individuals and go after their personal assets, so they aren't protected by that immunity cloak or whatever.
If they don't follow the Constitution, is that it? They are liable to immunity? I mean,
If they fraud you.
If they fraud you.
No, it doesn't matter under what premises. As long as if there's fraud involved, there's damages. If there's fraud, if there's deceit and damages, then you have an action in court.
Okay.
And by the oath of office issue also.
Can these lawsuits be? Can we teach people how to initiate these on television?
Oh, sure. We'll make a good stab at it. Yeah, and yeah, we'll start giving you the ability to formulate a complaint, You could if you wanted to do it in a class action type scenario, because what they're doing violates every person in this state. So if you want to do it in that manner, you don't have to go as individual plaintiffs on these actions. You could make a collective class action type of effort. You aren't going to get any lawyer. There ain't no lawyer that's going to handle it for you. This is something you got to do yourself. You got to bring your complaint in, and but don't let all this stuff spook you. The information, it ends up being very voluminous, but it's not conceptually difficult. This is all stuff we can learn and remember. We just got to spend time doing the homework. And
you get called for jury duty and you walk in court and they got this flag raised and their flag here with the yellow ring around. You say, hey, I'm not serving here. Third time.
Sure.
What are they going to do to you?
Come to court,
I was took back in judge's chamber one time and they asked me to leave by the back door. They wouldn't even let me back in the courtroom.
But they
let me back in there.
So what happened? You noticed them that there was a Wolverine Militia. Oh, okay. But that's what's going to happen. They're just going to shove you out the back door.
Yeah, they wouldn't even let me come to court.
I don't think they would try to do any kind of contempt thing or anything against you, because they really make an effort to avoid any opportunity for this information about the gold fringe flag, the statutory jurisdiction, any of these other clandestine issues. They try to make every effort to keep them off the record.
We did have, he's not here tonight, but Tim Westlake did win more or less a court case under the similar circumstances, similar conditions.
But under the, there's a movement, the fully informed jury
Right.
movement, that now if an informed juror sees a gold-fringed flag and doesn't like the jurisdiction that represents, can't you find that defendant not guilty? And you don't have to explain your reasoning to anybody.
Yeah.
But if you're a juror on a gold-fringed court and you don't like the law of the court, you have a right to decide that. You can
retain your ability in jury nullification by, even though you recognize that there's a gold fringe flag there, you go into that courtroom, sit down with the jury, and then you don't allow the court to proceed by not agreeing to the consent of the jury.
Juries at the very least, because
see what I'm saying?
this usurps their power of the courts, because the juror decides the facts.
Yeah.
And if you don't like the law,
just don't answer their questions, they're gonna what? Kick you out of there?
you don't have to
Well,
answer either question.
what I'm saying is you don't have to make a fuss. Go in and sit down with the jury, and then acquit the guy. Don't let him convict.
Let him talk. Let him present the case.
That's why they ran me
Right,
off.
right.
I said, go ahead.
Yeah, don't alert
Don't-
them to any of this.
No, you don't clue him in.
I guarantee you will have an acquitted person or whatever.
Right.
You know.
So that's
I
like,
said, I
here's your
guarantee
ticket
you
out of
I
here.
hung jury, and they said, you brought that door right there. They wouldn't even let me go
Right.
back to
If
the
you
court.
don't want to be court-martialed, it stands that your neighbors don't want to be court-martialed, and if you know they're being court-martialed, find them not guilty. Even if there's some terrible things being done out there, but we all deserve the law under the Constitution, not a martial law, not a military law, not any of this other stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody.
The military court has its own purposes within the venue of the armed forces, but it's not supposed to be employed on.
I will say that one that I was involved, they had to try the guy twice because he was whatever.
They did have a hung jury on the.
They did have
Yeah,
a jury.
uh-huh.
I said, I guarantee you, I'll hang that jury.
Yeah.
That's when they asked me to leave, and they did have a hung
So
jury.
this is where it can't happen. I mean, if we want to use the same kind of devices like they use by not informing them as to our purposes and stuff like that, we can go in and pretty much undermine all of their efforts. But it's not going to happen until enough people know what's going on, and they have to be shown that it affects them in their own life. People aren't going to care. Gold fringe flag. Oh, that's just the deluxe flag. That's $5 extra. No, it has a meaning. It has certain aspects of that directly affects your life and directly affects your kids and your grandkids, and it's something that has to be changed. It's one of the symptoms of the disease that's in this country right now.
Wasn't there a bill or something trying to get through where they would have professional jurors, otherwise members of the good old boys. What do you know about that?
I am not.
I've heard that here in town.
Is that right?
They're also
That
trying
is
to get, like,
spooky.
8-person juries and
That is spooky.
all sorts of stuff.
The jury of the peers is one of the most sacrosanct aspects of the legal system that was brought over from England in the common law. Actually, the jury of your peers was supposed to be people who were your neighbors, who knew you, who understood the situations, the individual situations, what was going on in your life, and were able to make a very informed decision about what was going on in whatever the issue was in the courtroom. Yeah, who don't even know anything about you, and they are lied to. They are told that they can only make decisions about the facts and not the law, and that's a lie. U.S. v. Doherty says that each jury has the ability to determine both the law and the facts. So the jury can decide whether the use of the law is appropriate or if the validity of the facts that are being used in the courtroom. In these military courts, the judges fraud you and tell you that you can only base your decisions based on the facts given to you, and you can't question the law.
You mentioned that he's a licensed contractor. I'm a licensed electrician. You all have driver's licenses. You ever see a licensed lawyer? Remember the bar.
We need
They
to
don't
buy
have,
one that
they
ain't
don't
a
have
regular bar.
licenses.
No, and there's no such thing as a lawyer's license. Licenses are supposed to be issued by the executive branch of the government, again, pursuant to the military war powers, their capacity to license. But what is purported to be the license in this state is the membership in the Michigan Bar. And there's been a case in Calhoun County here where somebody sued Judge Miller for not having a valid law license. It says in the Michigan Constitution that each judge is required to be licensed. Now, if you notice in the last election, they had a thing about judges, a person not being able to be a judge until they practiced law for 5 years. That's how they that's how they're getting away from that license requirement, because no judges have there are no real licenses. So now instead of the license requirement, they're saying you have to practice law for 5 years.
Yeah, so if we have to have a driver's license, why shouldn't they have to have a damn license to practice law?
Well, I've gone through a whole thing with my driver's license issues. I got only one time in my life I ever got a ticket, and I fought all the way to the top, Candace Miller, and they ended up just stopped responding to me because I was able to catch them on every aspect of the manipulation of law, and I was able to catch them on the unconstitutionality of the use of statute law. I went back to that issue I was talking to you about before, that you're trying to hit me. The state is claiming damage for something where there was no real injury. Nobody got injured when I was caught driving 10 miles over the speed limit. Now, in the lawful government, when the government can lawfully license you for commercial activity. So when you're driving for commercial purposes, they have the ability. So they have the lawful ability to create chauffeur's licenses, but they don't have the lawful ability to create personal operator's licenses. You know what I'm saying?
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's where the statute, the case law that I've seen on that stands.
Do you also wear your seatbelt too?
Yeah, I wear my seatbelt just because I want to avoid probable cause for being pulled over.
I refuse to wear mine. I won't.
How many people actually you could say that didn't have a seatbelt on was killed compared to the ones that did have one?
Well, they really can't come out and make any.
Now there's another one now. If you have to wear a seatbelt in your car, how come the children on school buses don't have to have
Well,
a
right.
seatbelt?
Yeah,
The police don't have to wear them.
right. It's because they own you, and are telling you what to.
Well, our congressmen don't have to pay no
Yeah,
If they pass a law that we have to wear seatbelts, then they have to pass that law where there's kids that
Well,
they don't have to have.
the whole purpose of the seatbelt law is not for your personal
I
safety.
didn't vote for it.
Well, nobody. I don't think anybody voted for it.
Right, see?
But the creation of the seatbelt law was to give the ability for police to pull you over for that simple reason. It gave a reason for probable cause. Now, you notice how the law now, and this is how this statutory government operates. When they first started the seatbelt stuff, they said, "Oh, it's optional," you know, and if we do pull you over, we're just going to tell you to hook up your seatbelt, and we're not going to, you know, we can't hit you for anything else. Well, that changed over time, didn't it? Yeah, and now they use it as their martial rule device to be able to pull you over.
Started back in '68 with a helmet.
Yeah. There have been. It's worthwhile to spend, you know, a few days going over, you know, a few afternoons going over to the law library, and just start walking through like the MCL or some of these other law books and see how these laws were put together and for what purposes. When you start looking at it long enough and start piecing things together, you'll start seeing what the real purpose of this de facto government is. It's not for the preservation of the rights of the individual. It's for the preservation of the rights of the corporate sphere.
Can you give us kind of advice on what we can do to make it so they can make them put seatbelts on school buses? Because I have no kids in school now. I have 2 granddaughters like that thought. And there's been so many accidents in school buses nowadays. How many kids have been getting hurt on them things? Or killed?
Well, you know, you'll have to try to go through the whatever de facto processes that can be used. Actually, I would be kind of reluctant to give my kid to a public school, and
Once they get them, they hang on to them.
yeah. Do you want your kids to become one of them? You know.
And they're mad when you take your kids out of the pub. I went through that.
Sure. The agenda of the public school is pretty much self-evident. They just want to teach you to be. They want you to be valueless people. People who have no other values other than working for a dollar and getting some. You know, pretty much. It's a form of religious teaching. They're teaching secular materialism, the value of material things above anything else, and really we should start seeing it in that sense. The use of the Federal Reserve note as a device of value transfer. All these kind of things are systems of belief rather than systems of substance. And when we start seeing it through that lens, we can start seeing that they are, in a sense, indoctrinating us to a certain type of, you could call, religious belief.
But I think another mistake that we make, now I don't know if this is 100% true or not, but I surmise that it is. If you don't, see, the public school is not teaching, they teach a history class. And they teach a citizenship class, but all they're doing is telling just what they want to
Exactly.
Not telling what really happened, you see. Like
Exactly.
Japan come over here and bomb Pearl Harbor. Well, there's always the story before the story, and it goes back.
Right.
You've got to take time to take that all in, you see, so you know what's going on. But if you take your kids out of the public school, or even if you don't, if you keep them in the public school, if you don't teach your kids and be very precise and very careful about this material and go through it so that they understand what's going on, then you're also doing an injustice.
Right. I agree. The next generation is going to have a real tough time trying to sort through what's what, and we have to make every effort, you know, in our abilities as parents and whatnot, to make sure that we pass on at least the ability to question, the ability to not submit directly and obediently to some presumed authority. Those are the things that we've got to pass on to our kids. You know, when they've learned to read, they can pretty much teach themselves what they can get from books. But these other aspects of values and methods of behavior, and especially the ability to remain independent and skeptical and question authority, this stuff has to be preserved. Too many people now just Yeah, you know, the sheeple syndrome.